So in this semester review video, we're going to continue our discussion about implementing policy and regulation in educational settings, but we're specifically going to dive deeper into cost-benefit analysis as one of the methods of conducting a cost analysis on different policy alternatives. So in this one, we focus in on estimating benefits, but I'll remind you and introduce the overall set of cost analyses frameworks that we can use. So there are three types of cost analyses. There's cost effectiveness analysis, cost benefit analysis, and cost feasibility analysis. Cost effectiveness analysis is essentially the way to find out which option is the least expensive to achieve a specific outcome. So all of the policy options have to achieve the same outcome. Which one does it for the least investment? Cost-benefit analysis, on the other hand, can evaluate policy options or projects that have different outcomes and can have different investments. This answers the question, which of these options provides the highest value for the investment? And the third analysis is called cost feasibility analysis. Essentially, can we do what we want to do on the budget that we have or that we can secure? A cost feasibility analysis can be added to a cost effectiveness or a cost benefit analysis. You can conduct cost feasibility and one of the other two types, but you typically do not do cost effectiveness analysis and cost benefit together. You would choose either cost benefit or cost effectiveness analysis, depending on what question you're trying to answer, and also whether your policy options have the same outcomes or if they can have different outcomes. So we're going to look first at cost benefit analysis, and in a future video I'll review cost effectiveness and cost feasibility in more detail. So cost-benefit analysis is very basic in terms of its logic. You add up all the benefits from a project in monetary units. They have to be in monetary units, but you add up all the benefits and you add up all the costs, and if the net present value of the benefits is greater than the costs, you have a ratio of greater than 1. If benefits are greater than costs, the benefit to cost ratio is greater than 1.00. And if that's the case, cost benefit analysis generally says that you do the project, whatever it is, because the investment is lower than the returns here being the benefits. Now, to do this, mathematically, you have to have benefits calculated in numerical terms, but more specifically, they have to be measured in monetary units in order for a cost-benefit analysis to take place. You have to have your benefits estimated in monetary units. It doesn't matter what currency, as long as it's the same currency as your costs or that you convert them into the same currency. There's a second takeaway about cost-benefit analysis, and that is that if you have multiple project options or multiple policy options, cost-benefit analysis generally says that you do the project that rewards you with the highest benefit to cost ratio. So if you have 3 different options, all of them are providing you with a BC ratio greater than 1, the way you decide between alternatives is you look for the one with the highest ratio. So in class we use this scenario that you want to open a new language school. We had you discuss in teams the type of business operation that you wanted to open, who your audience would be, how many teachers you would have, and you went through a lengthy process to identify all of the costs associated with your idea of a language school. And the 3 different groups came up with very different models. And that's the way it normally is. When you have policy options, you try to have some uniqueness to those policy options when you're solving a problem. In other words, it's not a true option if you have one policy that you tweak only slightly and you only make it slightly different from other alternatives. That's okay to do, but typically you want to have very different ideas about how to solve a problem, because that way you get more fresh perspective, you can evaluate the financials, and then within those different ideas, it's okay to have policy ideas that have some variance. For example, you have one approach to doing something and you might do that approach 5 or 10% more quickly, or it might cost 5 or 10% less. Those small adjustments are called, those small adjustments together help you do something called a sensitivity analysis. And that's where you test different versions of the same basic idea. So if your cost estimates are off by 20% and you've underestimated the true cost, then your sensitivity analysis would say, here is the initial estimate, and if I have underestimated my true costs, then what would that look like? So you could conduct a cost analysis on all of the costs using your best information, like we talked about in the last video, and then you can adjust it in a sensitivity analysis to test what happens if we've made a mistake. And you should do that both on costs and on benefits. Perhaps the benefits of a project, you estimate that they take 3 years to start, but what if they take 4 years to start? That's the kind of thinking that you need to have when you're evaluating different policy options. You need to conduct a sensitivity analysis where you test for those different outcomes and say, well, we might have, maybe costs will go up more than we expect. Or maybe there is some unexpected outcome that, even though it has a small probability of happening, if it happens, this is what it means to our estimates. So you should conduct additional analysis of a sensitivity analysis. So as you're evaluating an option, you have to document all of the known costs. These are all of the direct expenses and all of the indirect expenses, like we talked about in the last video looking at Pat's lemonade stand. But it also has to include the opportunity costs for people. That is to say, if you're using a person in the solution or in a project, you have to document their salary and the benefits costs for their time. You may already have people on the staff that are working with you, and so you feel like we're not paying any extra money to them. But what you have to account for is the fact that those people, when they come to work in your project or they're part of your policy solution, they cannot be doing something else. And so you use their salary and benefits amounts to estimate the value of their time that you're allocating specifically to these policy options. For example, if you had one policy that requires 5 people to execute, and another policy option that achieves the same goal, and it only requires 2 people to execute, but all of those people are already on your staff, then it doesn't hold true that those are equal because you already have them paid. Those people are already earning an income from your organization in this hypothetical situation. But you are allocating more of their time to solution 1 that requires 5 people. So you have to account for that. So your costs include all of your direct costs, like the cost of materials, and indirect costs like rent and space, any sort of licensing that you have to go through, all of those things. But your opportunity cost is also accounted for in the cost analysis. So if you want to go back and take another look at the cost estimates that you created as a group, here's the URL for you to do that. And then we shifted in the following week, we started looking at benefits estimation. I've said it before, and it's important that you remember that benefits must be estimated in monetary terms. You have to have a monetary evaluation of the benefits for cost-benefit analysis to work. So one of the things that you can use to, as a good example of how to do this, are to have this dialogue with yourself about what are the benefits of earning a graduate degree. What are your anticipated benefits in monetary terms? So we did talk about this a little bit. We talked about decreased unemployment over the course of your life. We talked about potentially increased earning opportunities, and both of those are things that can be estimated with monetary units. We talked about happiness and reduced stress, and you could take those things and estimate a financial benefit to those as well, although it's a lot harder to do. You could make some assumptions about reduced, improved health and reduced medical bills due to lower stress levels, but realistically, those things are very hard to evaluate in monetary terms. And that's one of the catches about the cost-benefit analysis, is that sometimes the benefits are difficult to estimate in financial terms or monetary terms, but you still have to do it that way. A cost-benefit analysis must be done in monetary units. So we looked at the school project where you're opening the language school, and you were supposed to forecast the benefits of your school's next 5 years. And most of you did that. If you were here in class, you did that. So you can go back to the URL and take a look at the benefits that were estimated in that spreadsheet and see what did it look like. In the case of the school startup, the benefits were essentially tuition and revenue. In the case of a non-tuition driven institution, or in the case of a policy that doesn't drive enrollment and tuition, you have to come up with other ways to measure benefits. It's not always tuition. For example, if you wanted to improve a school's retention rate so that more students continued and graduated, that might be difficult to estimate with financial benefits, but it can still be done. Not just through tuition revenue, as in a private university, but also in a public school, like a kindergarten through 12th grade school. If the school district or the government provides a budget to that school based on the number of students that are enrolled, well, that is obviously a way that you can estimate the benefits. It's the benefit to the organization that is hosting this problem or that's solving this problem. And so that's where you measure your benefits from. Okay, so we asked which of your projects, which of the language schools offers the highest benefit to cost ratio. I encourage you to go back and take a look at that spreadsheet and find the tab where we have all of the 3 different schools, because we had some very different business models and very different forecasts of benefits, and that led to quite a wide variety of benefit to cost ratios. And you'll also notice that we use the discounted cash flow method in the spreadsheet to evaluate these net value of benefits and the net present value of the costs before we did the benefit to cost ratio calculation. And that brings us up to the next topic, which will be cost effectiveness analysis and cost feasibility analysis. I'll discuss both of those in the next video.